Hi everyone, I'm Rich, and this is Mission 1820. You know, Deborah in the book of Judges was one of the most influential women in the Old Testament. She was a prophetess, she was a warrior, a songwriter, and the only female judge to ever shepherd God's people and lead Israel into battle against their enemies. So if you're looking to learn more about Deborah and her life and what you can learn from her leadership, her character, and her role in the biblical narrative, then this week's Characters of the Bible is for you. So stick around, we've got a good one for you. You know, I recently came across an article that as of June 3rd, 2025, there was a record 55 women that are CEOs of today's Fortune 500 companies. These extraordinary women, they've reached the pinnacle of their careers and their companies because they exhibited great leadership qualities, which made them good mediators, good advisors and planners for their companies. Well, there's another extraordinary woman in scriptures, and because of her leadership qualities and her relationship with God, God trusted her enough to actually make her a judge, and that woman is Deborah. You see, the insight and confidence God gave Deborah placed her in a unique position where in the Old Testament, because she was not only a prophetess, she was also the only female judge ever. Now, very little is known about Deborah, and she's only found in the chapters of 4 and 5 in the book of Judges, where in chapter 4, it just basically tells us about her becoming Israel's first female judge. But in chapter 5 is where it gets interesting because it's technically called the Song of Deborah, which is without a doubt one of the finest and earliest examples you'll find of Hebrew poetry. Though we know very little about Deborah's actual family, the book of Judges does tell us that Deborah came from the hill country of Ephraim, which is between Bethel and Ramah. Now, there under a palm tree, Deborah sat every single day. She was providing godly wisdom and guidance to those who stopped to seek her counsel. Now, we also know that Deborah was married to a man by the name of Labadoth, but unfortunately, that is all we know about this guy. So every day, Deborah was found seated under the palm trees of Deborah, which they are now known. She was sitting there determining causes and controversies while judging the people according to the laws of God. Deborah was an uncommon leader because she was a woman, yet God still called her to a prominent position as both a prophetess and a judge. And this was done at a time in history when God would normally appoint men to these positions. When Deborah did become judge, the Israelites had been dominated for 20 years by Jabin, who is the king of Canaan, as well as the commander of his army, who was a man by the name of Sisera. Now, Sisera had a 900 iron chariot army, which was a pretty formidable weapon against Israel's foot soldiers at the time. The Israelites were treated extremely cruelly by Sisera and his armies, and Israel's spirits were, no doubt, extremely low at that time. So we can gain an understanding of how bad it really was when Deborah describes those hardships of living under Jabin and Sisera when she tells us this in Scripture. She says, "The highway were abandoned and travelers kept to the byways. The villagers ceased in Israel, they ceased to be." Deborah was telling us, in other words, that people didn't leave their own homes and travel because they were so afraid of what might happen to them by Sisera. Deborah's story shows that she was not a power-hungry woman by any stretch in any of these roles, but she only wanted to serve God, and whenever praise did come her way, she just gave it to the rightful owner, God. She always gave God the glory because all of her strength, all of her confidence and her insight, well, that came from God. Deborah didn't deny or resist her position in the culture as a woman and as a wife. But she also never allowed herself to be hindered by either of those either. Deborah's experience shows that God can accomplish great things through people who are willing to be led by him. Now, Deborah's life challenges us in several ways, and you'll understand that when you read through the book of Judges. First, Deborah reminds us of the need to be available both to God and to others. Second, Deborah encourages us to spend our efforts on what we can do rather than on worrying about what we can't do. She challenges us to be wise in our leadership efforts, but more importantly, she demonstrates what a person can accomplish when they allow God to be in control of our lives. Deborah is a role model of one who woke up and took action. And she accomplished her everyday task as a judge. God called Deborah to increased opportunity to lead others, to wake up and serve the Lord. She teaches us to be unwavering in faith. She teaches us to embrace our call, even if it's uncommon to us. She teaches us to lead with conviction and courage and to celebrate the wins that God has given us. So closing. By studying the life of Deborah, we can learn lessons about faithfulness, about wisdom, courage, and humility. We can learn a lot from her. So there you have it. That's the life of Judge Deborah, who in the book of Judges stands out as one of the most powerful women of faith in the scriptures. So until next time, I hope you all have a great day. God bless, and thanks for watching.